Hello and welcome to That's Wild, a podcast series brought to you by the National Parks Board. I'm Elliot and I'll be your host for this series, where we'll be talking to special guests from the nature community about topics surrounding biodiversity conservation in our city and nature. Today, we're shrinking down to explore a world that we don't often notice, unless they show up somewhere in our rooms. That's right, we'll be diving into the fascinating world of insects. Before you reach for your bug spray, let me invite you to take a pause and lend your ears to insect enthusiasts Mao Sheng, Lumin, and Sebastian, who will be talking about the immense diversity of insects here in Singapore. Please introduce yourself, guys.
Hello, my name is Lumin. I like all kind of insects, but most of my experience is in butterflies and odonids, which consists of dragonflies and damselflies.
Hi, I'm Sebastian, currently working in the National Parks Board in the Conservation Division in Central Catchment Nature Reserve. I have a keen interest in insects before joining the National Parks Board.
Hi, I'm Mao Sheng. I'm an entomologist and a curator from the Chian Natural History Museum, NUS. And yeah, I like all kinds of insects, especially the ones that people fear the most.
Quite a wide range of backgrounds we have here and also interest in different types of groups of insects. Maybe just give me an idea of what is the diversity of insect species we have in Singapore. What are some interesting species that you guys know of and have observed before?
We do have a few that people are very familiar with. So we have the members of the Lepidoptera, the butterflies, the moths. We have members of Hymenoptera, your bees, wasps, and ants. We also have common things like your Orthoptera, your grasshoppers, crickets, etc. I'll leave Mao Sheng to deal with the more obscure orders, but I think something that we never seen that often are the Neuroptera, a personal favorite of mine. They're the lacewings, ant lions, and owl flies. Their name stems from lacy wings, so actually when you look into them in close detail, you can see that their wings are venacious, very pretty. Yeah.
Right. What kind of common insects do they resemble the most, for those that aren't familiar with lacewings?
I don't really think they resemble anything. They are just a standout on its own. When you see it, it's very pretty. It's very lacy. You can see it's like a pattern on a lacy kind of dress. The wings are very pretty. Yeah.
If people were to see them, they'll probably think it's like some long fly.
Or like a flying ant, something.
Yeah, like a flying green bean.
Right. Okay.
Flying green mean that would be a good way to compare.
How about some of the underrepresented species, Mao Sheng?
Underrepresented ones, I think like you look at say your earwigs, right? Certain silverfishes, right? Not the ones that are at home that eats your books. Then of course with my favorite group is actually your cockroaches and your termites. Right? The diversity is actually quite high. Like let's say for termites, we can say there is about 65 species of termites in Singapore.
Wow.
Right? And cockroaches we have about like at least 25 species.
And I guess when people think about cockroaches, we think about those that we find at home, right? But the diversity is a lot more than just what do you call it? The German and American cockroaches is the ones we find at home, right?
So like let's say for those in residential estate, those urban areas, right? There are typically about like 4 or 5 pest species, right? And this is something that is very common around the world, right? But in those in the forest itself, there's a lot more. And of course, I think recently we get to know that there's these emerald green cockroaches, right? And then cockroaches that are iridescent, cockroaches that are like a peel, what we call it as a peel cockroach.
I would like to highlight Diptera, the true flies, because when people think of flies, they only think of mosquitoes, the house flies, the ones they usually see in their house that's like bugging them. But recently I've been exploring a bit of like into some predatory flies like the robber flies and the mantid shore flies. Imagine a very small fly but with mantis claws. And what they do is they go around on muddy surfaces and they will like dig out larvae of other flies like midges and mosquitoes. And they've been explored in other parts of the world in terms of their effectiveness in combating malaria. So I think flies, because of how big the group is, the diversity is amazing.
So the other one that I can think of is actually what we know as your peel scarab beetles. The names already suggest that these beetles will actually roll themselves into a ball. So why these eyes are cool is because among Singaporeans, we think of beetles is always the ones that's always flying to your house and they keep knocking into the windows, talk, like very annoying. But we do have another scarab beetle, known as a peel scarab. These guys are actually possibly the inspiration for the golden snitch in Harry Potter. So we do have these species around, but the exact species, we still do not know them yet. We still need to wait for the expert to help identify them.
A group of insects that I think people usually encounter, but they do not know that they are insects, are the Archaeonata, the bristletails. Usually if you walk in nature trails, nature areas, you might come across them, but they actually resemble humped shrimps on land. They're a bit humped, so it actually is an insect, but you'll be like, what's that? That's not an insect. It's very obvious to identify when you see these 3 tails of different lengths, with the center tail being the longest. So they are actually insects of a very ancient origin. Yeah, because they are not able to fly.
Right.
So they just crawl around along nature trails, along your railings, along the trees. So yeah, this group, yeah, you can keep a lookout.
For myself, my answer will be a bit surprising to especially those in the nature community, but I think stick and leaf insects are a surprising group of insects that people will be surprised that there is in Singapore. Because to me, the majority of people that go out onto their nature walks, right, they only see the things that appear in front of them or like it's easily spottable. So of course, the insects, their literal naming is built upon their insane camouflage would be something that's very shocking to them once they spot it, especially for the leaf insect. The stick insect is a bit more believable to some people, but leaf insect is something they will see only in the books, the documentaries. But in Singapore, we have two species that's reliably seen, which is the Gray's leaf insect and the Chrysanthemum's leaf insect. And it takes a good eye to spot them for sure. But once they see them, I'm sure their eyes will be widened.
Any species that you guys might be a bit cautious of or wary of, or maybe a bit scared of?
In the Singapore context?
Yeah, in the Singapore context.
I think usually you're just saying, just be a bit wary of the potential wasps. Right? I mean, there are different kind of nests, like your paper wasps, your hornets, right? These guys can pose a potential danger if you would actually disturb the nest. So I think those are the ones that I would be wary of.
I don't think we are actually scared of them, but sometimes we are scared of the situation that resulted in them being provoked. Because they are just going about doing their own business. But sometimes it's like if some element trigger them, they might actually become defensive and come after us. So I have a personal experience, not in Singapore, but I think I was in India and I was like doing a nature trip and I saw a crested honey buzzard that flew low. So I was like, bird, is it going to perch? So let me follow it. So as I follow it, then suddenly I heard a lot of buzzing behind me. And then I suspected this bird went to attack the beehive. I think it's the giant honeybee. And then it ran away with the food. And then I walked into the path of the beehive and it started chasing me because I heard him buzzing around my ear and it started to aggregate behind me. Then I ran all the way back to the room. So things like this, I'm not scared of the bees, but when they're provoked by other means and start to chase us indiscriminately, then I'll be...
But you didn't get stung, lah?
Thankfully not. So I ran like crazy.
Even though I love insects now, I actually grew up with the fear of things flying into me. So it took me a while to get over the fear of moths, butterflies, bees, all this. But currently, I still have this small fear of grasshoppers, crickets, especially the large Javanese grasshopper. They're very unpredictable. If you disturb them, where would they fly to? Maybe onto me, maybe into my face. So that's why I'm still a bit wary of them when I walk past them in the nature trails. Yeah.
Jump scare.
Oh, yeah.
I've actually met a lot of people who spend a lot of time in the field. They're not really afraid. I mean, besides wasps, right? Wasps are a real hazard and hornets. A lot of them are afraid of, katydids and crickets and grasshoppers because they jump a lot. And I have a friend who is deathly afraid of katydids because he got bitten by one. And he swears that hurt the most out of all the different bites he's got. I don't know how he got bitten by one, but it was apparently chewing on his finger. And there's some carnivorous katydids, right?
Yes,
Some
yes.
katydids are carnivorous, right? Yeah.
Have you seen the raspy cricket before?
No.
It's huge. I saw one recently.
It's a cricket.
It's a cricket. Then the antenna is hella long.
Right.
And you never know if it will jump on you or not. Because I have one that was jumping after me before, but I was trying to photograph it. So I was constantly shifting backwards as it jumped towards me.
Can we describe how big it is for the audience because they can't see? But
The largest one I saw
Palm size.
was palm size in Singapore. The orange ones especially.
the reason why I ask this question is because a lot of us grew up with this unhealthy fear of insects, right? We're taught to be afraid of insects in general. If you see it in the house and you get rid of it, right? So what are some common myths about insects that you guys think need to be debunked?
I believe the biggest common myth is that everything is not out there to get you for sure. So a lot of people think a lot of insects will come and kacau you, will come and bite you just because they want to. But no, the insects, they're so small. We're hundreds of times bigger than them. Yeah. There's no way they will come at us just because they could. They're going to die more likely. We do more damage to them than they do damage to us. Only those few bloodsuckers, mosquitoes and the biting midges that will come at us for the blood. Other than that, they're just protecting themselves, especially for the bees, the hornets, the wasps. If you leave them alone, they also will leave you alone. So they're really never out there to get you.
Any other myths?
I have a very random myth. I think mainly stems from the European side where earwigs do not enter your ears.
Do we have earwigs here?
Yeah,
We have
have
earwigs here, but like I think more common in temperate countries, they usually like to enter people's home because it's warmer, and then people always have this fear that, oh, when I sleep, if there's a earwig, it's going to enter my ear. But they don't want to do anything to you. And then you see these pincers that they have, forceps pincer that they have. It's actually mainly for the males to toss one another around to fight for supremacy, and it's not going to harm any one of us. Yeah.
These pincers are on the
At
tail.
the abdomen,
Yeah,
at the end of the abdomen.
At the
Yeah, they have a
abdomen.
big, nice pincer.
I think usually people just think insects are meant to be disgusting, right, or dirty. Yes, like you said, just because of the term got creepy crawlies. But most of them are actually quite clean.
Right.
Yeah, and so like in case of like looking at say flies, also, of course maybe like house flies, blowflies, those are the ones that could be vectors of diseases. But majority of the flies are actually quite fine.
I've also heard that cockroaches are quite clean, but I don't know how true that is.
If cockroaches being cleaned, that one was because usually when it comes to cockroaches, like say the American cockroach or German cockroaches, these guys will always tend to clean themselves because they need to navigate through the environment, right? So they need to keep the antenna clean. But yes, potentially they may still carry some kind of diseases or bacteria on them because of where they are seeking their food, right? In rubbish dump, decomposing organic material. But yes and no, I guess if you do that myth, right, they will keep themselves clean, but at the same time, they still can carry some potential bacteria on them.
Following up from that, insects and other animals all have a role to play in our ecosystems. So what are some important roles that insects play that maybe we take for granted?
Well, they are important food source for a lot of our native biodiversity, especially birds and reptiles. Yeah, whether native or not, they are still food to our birds.
I think that one is actually maintaining the soil fertility, right? Because we want to have like many trees, the greenery all around us. But in order for them to grow the trees, you need to have a very good soil. So some of these insects are actually responsible to keeping the soil more fertile and also aerated as well.
For me, it's their various roles in agriculture, especially pollination and pest control. Pollination is a big deal because we all know our plants are built upon mostly insect pollination. They rely on them to like spread their genes far and wide. And this has been the case for like millions, hundreds of millions of years. And we are taking it for granted as we put our pollinators at risk, our native bees especially, when they're doing the work of like many other honeybees. And for the case of pest control, a lot of people don't really know about like how big of a deal wasps are in agriculture, because if you think of any single pest, like for example mealybugs, aphids, there's always going to be a few wasp species out there that will be out there to get them for you. And all this is for free. You don't have to spend any manpower costs or whatever to get rid of the aphids.
I think that's a really good point about the agricultural aspect of things. Just to give the listeners an idea, right? What are some crops that we know of that are pollinated by all these bees and whatever other insects?
At the top of my head is the plants that are buzz pollinated, especially brinjal eggplant, tomatoes. The buzz pollination is when a bee goes to the flower and it buzzes at a certain frequency enough for the pollen to fall off onto the bee. This is very important because no other insect will probably be able to reach that vibration frequency in order to get the pollen. Then the plant won't be able to spread its pollens, right?
But I'd like to go back to the point that Sebastian made, is that they're food for a lot of different animals, but they're also food for humans, right? In some countries, and I'm going to direct this towards you, Mao Sheng, because I know that you like to experiment eating insects, so maybe you could touch a bit more on that. Yeah,
Where do I even start? Like how many?
wherever you want.
Yeah, so I think we do know about edible insects now has been approved really, right? But I guess there still need more education, more awareness with regards to eating edible insects. True, edible insects actually do not only just provide protein, but they also do provide some form of dietary fiber, right? Because of the chitin, right? So that's very similar to like eating your prawns, eating your crabs. So edible insects will be like eating both protein and dietary fiber at the same time. And I guess it's also understandable, why, usually people like in Singapore, a modern city, we are not used to eating edible insects because of all the availability of other food, right? Your chicken, your beef, fishes, prawn. So it's like we have so much food, why do we need to resort to eating edible insects? On the more hidden side of things, or something more historical, is that in the past, there are actually Singaporeans who actually travel all the way to JB, right, in order to eat on termite queens, because there is a so-called, say, some kind of medicinal value to cure arthritis, right, to help with personal health reasons. Yeah, and also looking back to many years, edible insects has always been around, right? And our neighboring countries like Thailand, Cambodia, right, maybe certain parts of Malaysia, they also have been eating insects for the long periods of time already. So eating insects itself is actually not really say something that too novel. I think it's just maybe the culture in Singapore that is has given this mindset that this is something novel to us.
I think one example that I can think of that we still are eating, but maybe unknowingly, is like cordyceps. I mean, cordyceps is a fungus that kind of infects insects. Right then in the TCM shops, you see the cordyceps and it looks like a bug. And then
Right.
when we grew up, we're told that, oh, no, it's a fungus. But actually, it is the bug, right?
Part fungi.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite interesting because I met this auntie and was like, you have eaten insects before. And then I just showed to her, you have eaten cordyceps. And she was like shocked. She was like, oh my, I've been eating them for so long. Yeah. And the other thing also to add on is, like when it comes to, let's say, red velvet cake, right? So those are actually coming from your cochineal bugs. So you kind of like have been indirectly eating bugs for quite some time already when you eat your favorite desserts.
The dye, is it? Or
Correct, it's the dye.
of red? Wow.
Also, like all the ants they get into your cup of water.
Yeah, extra protein. Right?
Yeah.
Welcome to Nature Nuggets. In the spirit of our podcast titled That's Wild, we wanted to ask our guests to recommend something wild that they've come across or enjoyed and that you can check out yourself too.
For myself, I would like to recommend clip-on lenses for your phone because it's a budget-friendly option to like the huge camera gears you see people use to take off insects. And for me, I believe phone photography with the clip-on macro lens is a very flexible option because you can just be walking freely, and then if you see something you want to photograph, you just take out your phone and your clip-on lens and you just shoot. And because it's such a small setup, it helps you be more flexible also in what angles you want to take of the subject.
Okay, so after you take a photo and you do not know what they are, let me introduce some field guides that we have in Singapore. We have various insect field guides. They're very accessible. We have the butterflies of Singapore. We have, I think, the damselflies and dragonflies of Singapore. We also have the bees of Singapore. And even more recently, the spiders of Singapore.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, these are very good references. Even if you do not go and shoot them, just flipping a few pages, seeing all these colorful insects and arachnids is very soothing to the soul.
So adding on to what Sebastian has mentioned, we do have this Singapore Pokédex, right? The Singapore Biodiversity Online. So, with like photos that you have taken, right, you actually can compare to what we see on the website and you get to see, whether is it a species that has been discovered, or a species that's waiting to be discovered. And also with that also, it's like, I would kind of like being a fan of myself, just go play Pokemon. Right? Pokemon itself, is basically in like a virtual world of like doing biodiversity research, right? Going around, you get pictures, right? You get to understand what's their biology. And the fun fact, Pokemon is actually born out of bug catching.
I'd like to touch a bit more on the threats that insects face. In particular in Singapore, do we know of any particular groups that face threats here?
This is a bit hard to say because sometimes when it comes to this biodiversity and conservation, before we want to conserve, we need to know what we actually are protecting. So one of the main challenges for us entomologists face is that we do not know how many species are out there and what are the different species.
Right.
Maybe in general we know, there's this like earwig, there's this owlfly, but we don't know what are the species, like what is the name given to them yet. So sometimes it becomes a challenge for us to really determine what is the species diversity in an area that we actually want to conserve. So that is actually one of the challenges.
Yeah, so in Singapore, basically, we need a lot more research done on insects.
Yes, correct.
Right.
For me, I echo Mao Sheng's point on there's too many out there and too little that we know. We call this the impediments to insect conservation because when you think of taxonomies, people who name insects or describe insects, a lot of them are getting older. And now, because with all the novel survey techniques, we are getting a lot more insect discoveries. So it's a pity that they are out there, but we have no one to actually properly identify, separate them, and describe them. Or actually, separation, we have DNA now to help to speed up the process, but there's many specimens just waiting to be described and to have a proper name to them so that we can like find out more about what they do, and then we can package all this information to these species to be able to protect them, to know about them. Also because insects are not exactly the most charismatic species, so usually conservation efforts do not directly go to them. Like funding, will you rather fund a very charismatic looking tiger versus this butterfly versus this earwig. Yeah, the interest is not as strong compared to other charismatic vertebrate species. So I think there's one threat.
Off the top of my head, I think butterflies and odonates, they are the threats that they face are a bit more well studied in Singapore, especially for odonates because their needs are so specific. They need like clean water, and not just any clean water. Some species prefer streams, some species prefer still water. And one species I can think of is the green metalwing, Neurobasis chienensis. It's a huge damselfly. Okay, it's huge for our damselfly. It's one of our biggest. And it's currently extinct in Singapore because it inhabits like rocky streams, rocky fast flowing streams. And you tell me, where in Singapore currently do we have fast rocky flowing streams, right? So their last known habitat, I think it was in MacRitchie, and that was the last known place that the green metalwing was found. And for butterflies, their needs are also pretty specific. They need host plants to breed, they need nectaring plants. But the most important aspect is definitely the host plants because butterflies are picky. A lot of species only feed on one or two plant species.
From my point of view itself, we always talk about human-wildlife conflict. So for me, I would include insects into the wildlife as well. So the thing is, how is it going to be indirectly affecting the insects, right? That possible threat is because, when people are having new areas, you want to grow plants, right? And then you always have these demarcations like, this area is the human area, right? Any insect that come inside will be wiped out. Right? Who knows, maybe the insect that you're wiping out could actually be a potential new species. But you also don't even know what's its role. Could it actually be there, like, say, some of the hoverflies, right? It's actually there, right, to visit your flowers and pollinate them. At the same time, hoverflies, the young ones, the maggots, usually the term maggots, we think, they are always being very dirty. But these maggots are actually useful. They will actually help to prey on, like, say, some of the aphids or some of the whiteflies. So just having to know what insects are out there and getting to know them, then you can know how you can actually coexist with them. So that, you do your stuff, you help me do my gardening. No, I'll just help to water the plants, give fertilizers, something like that.
I think you mentioned that insects, right, it's quite hard to persuade people to appreciate them a bit more. We talked a lot about how they're so important to us, but would that be a strategy to kind of get more people interested in insects, or are there other ways?
I think this is what maybe the young entomologists are doing, actually reaching out there, sharing photographs of all the different insects that they found, from the charismatic one, of course, and of course sometimes some of the weird looking ones, strange looking or cool looking ones, right? And I do get to see, some of the younger kids getting interested to find out what the insect they found, what they can learn about it, what's their role. So having to generate the interest, I think that is something that we need to continue on in order to make sure that future generations, they can actually be our successors, right? And then to help to maintain the biodiversity and conservation.
And it sounds like any help is welcome, right? Because there's a lot more research to be done. So we know that citizen science is a big thing nowadays for all types of taxa, all types of animals, plants. But for insects, what are some interesting, citizen science initiatives that we have in Singapore?
Not an initiative like solely in Singapore, but I'm a big fan of the app iNaturalist. It's a global platform that people use to key in their observations, and then researchers from there can actually like tap in on the data that's easily available online. They can just search a species in a certain area, and then voila, there's this much records there. Then they can infer from the data there. And personally, I use iNaturalist to keep track of my own species count also. So iNaturalist is great. Please use it.
I think for people who just want to start out to learn a bit more about the whole citizen science programs, I think the National Parks Board NParks actually do run several citizen science programs. So actually you can join the mailing list or you can check out the NParks website, because it may not just be solely for insects. We have the Butterfly Watch, we have the Dragonfly Watch. It also expands to some of the bird watchers like Garden Bird Watch, Heron Watchers, or even the nationwide BioBlitz. Yeah, and then for youths that actually are interested to help in insect conservation or to like venture into this field, from year to year, we actually do also run Youth Stewards for Nature, where youths can actually take part with some of our programs. So if they're interested in a very specific project topic, they can actually look at the list of projects and then they're able to see what interests them and they can sign up. So I saw for 2025, there's actually some kind of insect theme projects such as developing insect-friendly gardens, enhancing a dragonfly pond, for example. So there's plenty of opportunities out there for interested people to start.
Since you're promoting NParks, then I will promote the museum side. Well, I mean, that's actually regards to citizen science. I mean, with like say some of the students, I mean, you can come to the museum, right? You can see all the different insects that are actually being pinned. But it's not only just the museum, but there are labs also, right? Say in NTU, in NUS, there are different projects that are ongoing, right? They can actually reach out and then say, how can I participate or how can I, contribute to the research? And from there, you can actually garner more interest, develop further the interest with regards to insects they are actually looking at.
Oh, sorry, I would like to add on also, other than iNaturalist, there's also, social media nowadays. There's a lot of nature groups in Singapore, like the Singapore Wildlife Sightings Facebook group where people post their sightings. And once in a while, there will be some people that post some unknown, obscure insect, and then it will get all the researchers excited. And I also want to add on also, I'm volunteering with the Woodlands Botanical Garden. It's a community garden initiative that's focused on wildlife-friendly gardening, and it also aims to help breed the near-threatened common birdwing and the common rose. But in the process of protecting these two species, it also helps create an environment for many, many other animals as well, not just insects. And people can get involved with the planting, like the photography, and many more. And it's not just people from the science field. It's like people that just want to help, be the residents there, people they're just getting interested. And it's just regular citizens. And I believe it's a great initiative and a good example of citizen science that way.
What's the coolest thing that has come out of some of these citizen science programs?
I think one of the recent ones was a friend of mine, right, from the museum. He was like walking through his HDB blog, and he was like found out, it's like, hey, this insect itself, is it something very cool? Then he showed me the picture of it, and I was like, this is an owlfly. I was like, why is an owlfly in the urban area? So those actually is one of the cool sightings. So was like trying to figure out where it comes from, right? And then from the area we see that there's no forested area, so how did it actually land up there? And then we get to know more about owlflies, right? So that was actually a good contribution. And then he actually submitted to the Singapore Biodiversity Records. If you want to see an owlfly, you can actually imagine it as like a damselfly, wings folded. But the unique thing about it is that usually when damselflies, their antenna is very short. But for owlflies, the antenna is actually extra long. And the eyes actually is quite huge, very similar to a dragonfly. So yeah, usually most people will actually mistake that owlfly as a dragonfly or a damselfly. But once they see the antenna, they know, oh yeah, it's an owlfly, something that is very uncommonly seen.
I mean, it sounds like a fantasy kind of creature.
Wait till you see its larvae.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow, that is even more fantastic.
It's a living hair clip.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes, also huge jaws, flat body, and it just looked like some final boss in some game,
If you make it like 100 times bigger.
Yeah.
On like iNaturalist site, I think in April there was this golden birdwing that appeared in Singapore Botanic Gardens. It was first posted on iNaturalist, and then some butterfly people were just like, this does not look like a common birdwing at all. And then the next day, everyone rushed down to Botanic Gardens to look for the golden birdwing, and it appeared on street signs. So this is a good example of how discoveries can be made on iNaturalist and other social media platforms. If you've seen our common birdwing, which is a large black and yellow butterfly, the golden birdwing is not that much different, honestly. It just has some missing spots on the hind wing, which is the yellow part, and also the key feature that separates it from the common birdwing is like on the yellow patch of the hind wing, it has black dustings, like there's literal black powder looking kind of patterns instead of the clear yellow that the common birdwings has. Yeah.
We've really showed that insects are indeed really fascinating. I'd just like to close off with one last question. How can we better coexist with insects, especially those that commonly fear? And what role does public perception actually play in how we treat insects in our environment?
I think to be patient and to retain your childlike curiosity. When you're young, you go around touching everything and get scolded by your parents. I think children are fearless that way. And same for insects, right? They could be like, what's this insect? What's that insect? The first response is never fear. I mean, at least that's what I think for children. So if adults can retain this childlike curiosity, you can actually, instead of fearing it, you can be like, oh, what's this? And be patient, of course. Not like, oh no, something entered my house, get it out. You can just like, what is this? Take a closer look. Oh, it's actually very pretty for a beetle. Yeah, so I mean, if you can retain this curiosity, you can research more about it, take a closer look, you can actually find a new fascination for this, and it helps to coexist with them because you can like help it along its way instead of just removing it with a spray. And with all this, if everyone has this kind of mentality, more appreciative of insects, it will actually shape the whole community to actually want to learn more about insects instead of fearing them.
So yeah, learning not to fear insects, right? But let's say if a person who's actually more fearful of insects, right? And so it's like what Lumin has mentioned. Those insects there, you get to know they are actually not there to harm you in the first place, right? So and also you get to know where could your fear actually be coming from, right? And usually I think some of the students or some of the teachers even or some of the folks I talk to, they kind of not sure where the fear actually comes from. Let's say for the case of cockroaches, right? You see cockroach there, yes, of course, it's valid that you will get fearful of them. But they're just there, and then the moment you go close, they will just tend to run away, right? So having to know where your fear is coming from and understand, those insects are just there, maybe just bypassing, they're just trying to find their way around. And then you just need to shoo them away, and then that's it. Don't need to really go about having to straight away exterminate them.
To add on also to Mao Sheng and Sebastian, I believe there's like 4 levels of public perception of insect. So the first level is just they don't understand or they don't know what the insect is. So they're just a bit wary of it, but they're still curious about it. So these are usually like children, like because they're born without fear, they will go to it. But sometimes they still have this innate sense that, okay, maybe we shouldn't touch this thing, but they'll still want to find out what it is, right? So I believe that one is the easiest to help like reinforce like the good perception of insects. Then there's the level 2, which is the fear is passed down from like your parents, for example, or like some other friends that may have had bad experience with the insects. Then they themselves will also spread these like myths and the fear to other people because that's what they've been taught and they've never been told the right things. Then there's level 3, which are the people that actually experience those traumatic experiences, like for example, being stung by a wasp. So no matter how much you say, oh, wasps won't go out to get you, they're actually just defensive, they won't believe you because they'll say something like, oh, the wasp stung me, you're not doing anything, but they're not aware of what they're doing. So maybe they were actually like in the vicinity of a wasp's nest or whatnot. And that one is still a bit hard to change. You need to like really, really be patient with them. Then there's level 4, that people that just hate insects. That one, there's no saving it. And for the public relationship with insects, I believe since the olden times, I quote this from my partner Chian, that like the relationship between insects and people, right, is transactional. We have this perception that there are good insects and bad insects. So the good insects are the insects that are of use to us, like for example in pollination, all those bees, they will definitely know that it's good for us. Then there's the butterflies, they do things like being pretty, I guess. Then there's the bad insects, which usually involves the insects that bite us, like mosquitoes. But it also includes insects that people don't know or they don't think are of use to us. Like for example, a majority of beetles, they think they exist just because they exist. They don't do anything for us. And then they're just there to be annoying, especially when they fly into our house. So they group these under bad insects. And I think people need to understand that everything exists for a reason in this world. Everything came about because they adapted to something. They have a use in the environment. They have a role to play. And not everything should be based on what their use is to us humans.
Those are some very philosophical answers to those questions. There's a lot for us to think about. Now, before I wrap up, just want to say thank you to all 3 of y'all. Maybe we can say bye to the audience by making some insect sounds. Thank you for listening to this episode of That's Wild. If you would like to hear more, tune in for more episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And if you like our content, don't forget to show your support by hitting the follow button and giving us a 5-star rating. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.